Welcome to the debate, is social media worth the time and effort for a startup entrepreneur? This debate is hosted by the Social Entrepreneurship and Education Consortium, referred to by the acronym SEEC. SEEC is a global consortium to facilitate the creation of social enterprises across the globe. This debate asks the question, is social media worth the time and effort for a startup entrepreneur? We are not questioning the value of social media covering many functional areas of ventures. This question arises from a common scarcity of startups. That scarcity is of both time and money. Is it worth the time and/or money at the launch in early stages of the startup to focus on social media, or is it better to focus the time and money on other endeavors? My name is Gary Palin. I'll be the moderator of the debate. I have a background of over 30 years experience as an entrepreneurship professor and a serial entrepreneur. We have two millennial entrepreneurs that are joining us to debate this issue, and they are both former students of mine, so they are a bit of a glutton for punishment, I think. We have Ryan Budden and Elizabeth Greenberg. If you can't see the distinction, Ryan has a beard. Now, Ryan is in Tennessee and is a new homeowner as of yesterday. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And Ryan's, I believe you're 2 years, both of you, I believe, are 2 years graduated from university. And
Right.
you started a company, Greek Check. And Ryan, would you just give a quick background what Greek Check is?
Absolutely. So yeah, as soon as I graduated from college, I started Greek Check. We're a mobile phone application to help small and medium-sized organizations virtually take attendance automatically. So without getting into the crazy details, we do it through a technology called geofencing. So we established the ability to create an electronic dog fence anywhere in the world. And then just like a dog fence shocks the dog's collar, if you have our mobile app across that invisible line, you get checked in and checked out of an event. So we can take that really far, and one of the main focuses we try to achieve is limiting the liability for small and medium-sized organizations. Pretty cool.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it. And Elizabeth Greenberg is currently in North Carolina, and I guess moving is a consistency on this discussion because, Elizabeth, you moved into a new apartment yesterday.
House, actually, in Charlotte, yes.
Oh, so it's in Charlotte. So you moved away from the Chapel Hill area. All right, and Elizabeth, again, is a former student of mine. I believe also a couple of years out of university, and it started a company while you were a sophomore in college, I believe.
Going into my sophomore year, yes.
And it's Nonsense Flower. So Elizabeth, could you just give us a bit of a background on your venture?
Of course. So when I was ending my freshman year going into my sophomore year, I had a very close friend of mine who was diagnosed with cancer. I had family members that went through cancer treatment, knew people who had been in hospitals before. I was the one that was kind of meant to give the gift, so choose and send the gift myself. So through that process, I found out that live flowers are actually not allowed in transplant oncology or intensive care units in hospitals, mostly because of the bacteria risk in the water and then airborne allergens, all posing a threat to patients' health. So I created Nonsense Flowers. We use handcrafted, fair certified, and environmentally sustainably made papers. That was a new addition this year, to make paper flower bouquets with custom personal messages inside every flower. So it's kind of like a gift and a greeting all in one. We work with women refugees who have come to the United States seeking new work and a better life. So they are actually the ones who are making all of our arrangements at this point in time, and the papers we use are all made by women cooperatives in Nepal and Bangladesh. So we're super excited about that, and we're kind of trying to help people in difficult situations and get them through with a little bit of color.
Very good. Well, thanks, Elizabeth. And I know both of you doing very well with your ventures. And that's one of the things, being a professor, is very proud to see your successes.
Get to take some credit for it at least.
Well, I always maintain that we share everything 50-50. You do all the work. I take all the credit. 50-50 sharing.
Sounds about right.
That worked. Okay, so I believe we're going to do an opening statement. And Elizabeth, I believe you were going to start with the opening statement. Was that what we had agreed upon?
Yeah.
It's all yours.
All right. So social media, it gives us an opportunity to turn our companies into a person, someone who's authentic and real, with a voice, with an opinion, a heart, and a conscience. Because of platforms like Facebook and Twitter, we can talk to our customers as people. We can learn what they're interested in and hear what they have to say, and we can even help them if they're having problems. Not only that, but by interacting in such a public, online, and social space, we can show what kind of person our company really is and what we represent and stand for. So we have this amazing opportunity to be able to back up all of the claims we make and what we say with actions that can be seen online. Entrepreneurs tend to start their companies for a reason. As you heard, both Ryan and I have a purpose and a reason why we started our companies. I started Nonsense, as I said earlier, because I found out of that hospital restriction with live flowers, and that for some people, live flowers can actually cause a risk to them if you're sending them in a cut bouquet. So today, I make these flowers. I sell these bouquets. But that's not the only thing that I do. The rest of what we do is related to why we do it. So I want to sell my bouquets online, and I want to help people who can't receive traditional live flowers. But I want to do a lot more than that. I want to make people smile. I want to uplift people who are in really difficult situations. And I want to spark creativity and innovation and encourage people to connect more with one another. Social media is what allows me and others to strive towards those types of things, to convey messages to a global audience via Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Pinterest, to name just a few of them. Instead of simply posting product photos, I can help educate people on the dangers of live cut flowers. I can share events that are happening to support children's cancer and blood disorders. I can not only do that, but I can give people examples and encourage them to get creative with our arrangements. I can connect people who benefit from sharing stories with one another, and I can get the message out not by shouting at people and disrupting them, but by offering them the opportunity to be part of a community, or as Seth Godin calls it, a tribe of sorts, and be a helpful resource to them. Through the continuous relationship that we've been able to build with our customers through social media, more than 40% of our customers are return customers and spread the word themselves about our company. Because of social media today, companies don't meet our customers. We don't meet our customers at the beginning of their discovery process. We meet them at the very end. Many times consumers have already done their research, looked up companies, and pretty much made up their minds about what type of company we are and who we are before even speaking to a company representative. Statistics do show that a social media presence, an active social media presence, more than doubles the possibility that someone's going to actually continue to research you further and travel to your website. The average Facebook user has about 130 friends, so every time someone likes you or shares something, you're getting 130 more sets of eyeballs on whatever that is. So if you get, for example, 20 likes on something, that's 2,600 sets of eyes that are going to be seeing what you're saying. Today, social media is a platform that none of us can afford to ignore. While it's not going to grow you a magical beanstalk to get you to the golden goose, you're certainly destined to be left out of the conversation and forgotten if you ignore what social media can do for your company.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. And Ryan, you have 2 minutes to rebut Elizabeth's opening statement.
Well, I got to say, Elizabeth, I agree with a lot of what you said. You provided some really, really good points. So I've chosen to take more of the kind of harsh realities of return on investment as my viewpoint into this social media effort. And one of the things that I like what you said is the instant communication. It provides a forum for feedback as well as a tool to immediately get out to your audience. I feel that it did exist. A lot of times, Facebook in particular now is actually monetizing some of those mediums that were once upon a time free. If, for instance, you can message your entire every follower on Facebook at a cost now instead of free. So there is a cost driven towards that. The other one is on. You presented an awesome point. You know, I think it's 130. The average person has 130 friends, mm-hmm. So a like gets you exponentially more. Both Facebook and Instagram have made the decision to move from a model in which, and I'm actually going to talk about this a little bit more later, a model in which if you choose to like a business page and then that we as a business post, it directly is reflected on their newsfeed, to an algorithmic model, meaning that they prioritize people that are paying more money. It comes back to the money issue. And statistically, only 6% of the audience that choose to follow you do receive that message. So if 1,000 people are getting it, you're only really reaching 60 of them by posting on social media. And then another really big point that I think you made, and I do agree with, is the validation tool of it. Social media is a big validation tool. You do that research beforehand and then get to a social media site, and it's kind of that, oh, they are a real company, oh, they do have this existing body. I would just argue that instead of, it just needs to be there. There doesn't really need to be a lot of effort to have the same end output of that social media, of that tool. That's my 2-minute rebuttal. I'd love to dive now further into a little bit more of what I've generated and kind of flush out my viewpoint for you guys.
Okay, so Ryan, so your opening 5-minute statement.
Fantastic. So one of the only undeniable truths about life is that no matter how you spin it, there's only 24 hours in a day. We're all busy, and those that are successful are often the ones that have chosen more wisely how to allocate those 24 hours. As a startup entrepreneur, we often don multiple hats based on the necessity of filling these diverse roles, and that time constraint escalates dramatically as the venture moves forwards. So the savvy entrepreneur has to calculate how much time of various activities will consume, while always having a really keen eye and monitoring the monetization and how much money that's going to drive back into the business. So having kind of thought over that and running the scenarios and multiple decisions, I really don't think social media is an effective use of time as a customer acquisition tool. And I think social media should merely be used to establish a base presence, effectively translating to what we were just talking about, a validation tool for a venture's customers. So let me be clear on what I'm saying by that, because it's kind of difficult to follow. I think a startup business should always have a presence on each social media platform, but what I mean by that is merely a page that's running. So they can utilize those communication and feedback tools, but they should not spend the time and invest the time necessary to launch effective campaigns and drive traffic to those pages. So in presenting this viewpoint, I'm going to walk you guys through the stages and hopes when you're launching and maintaining a campaign via social media and point out the various traps and challenges along the way. And then I'm going to finish up by kind of combating what is often heralded as the biggest selling point of social media, and that's the fact that it's free. So let's get started. I made the point that kind of the most important thing is time. So how long does social media actually take? So if you ask around, I often get told, 5-10 minutes for a good post. Well, and ironically, social media is littered with articles explaining how to create a good post in 5 minutes. Well, according to ComScore, based on a study that they did on small businesses based in the United States and in the UK, small business owners said that they spent an average of 6 to 10 hours per week marketing their companies on social media. So that's roughly an entire day every week spent just on social media platforms. So that is a huge drain on time. So that was kind of shocking to me even. So I had to take a closer look into what they're doing during those 6 to 10 hours. And the way I did that was drive statistically deeper into each platform and see what was the optimal number of posts in a day. And what I found was that on Twitter, it's 14 to 22 times per day you should be posting. Facebook, it's 2 times. LinkedIn, it's 1. Google Plus is twice, and Instagram is 1.5 times per day. So that's, if you're following with the 5 biggest social media platforms, that's 20.5 posts per day. And those statistics were from Buffer Social, who collect media statistics. So the obvious answer to that is, well, why not use one of these various platforms out there that will automatically post for you, so you can do a day's worth of posts in a small period of time. According to Ellie Merriman, who's a social media expert from HubSpot, her leading point of advice to small businesses is don't use auto posters, because followers report that they can easily tell, and it causes users to disengage. So there's my first point. It really does take a lot of time to effectively run one of these campaigns. So let's assume that you're going to. You've figured out that this time is worth it. The next step is, one of your main goals in launching a campaign is, as was pointed out, to gain more followers. So the next campaign you launch, you're really increasing, you're broadening the market that you're advertising to. So I kind of have to look at this, but one of the big pitfalls is that Facebook and Instagram have moved from a model in which if you follow a business page, every time that business posts, you're going to get that update, to an algorithmic model. And this has huge ramifications for those small businesses, because they actually have a top shelf limit on what the audience you can reach before you start paying. And that limit is 6% of the following. So again, 60 out of 1,000. That number can be increased by following. And Instagram has just moved to that model about a month ago. So I would predict that the percentages would be similar, but because of the limit in time, the facts haven't settled yet. So it's something for all of us to keep our eyes on in the next coming weeks as those statistics really do firm up. Another stifling problem is, once you broaden your reach, you kind of have to take a look back and look at how many followers you've gained and analyze who those people are, how you can best engage with them. And there's an abundance of fake accounts on the leading social media platforms, so you have to really take that into effect. Twitter reports that 8.5% of its accounts are fake. Facebook is 8.7%, and Instagram is 8.2%. So that's almost 10%, 1 in 10 of followers are not real. They're just fake accounts that don't really lead anywhere. Those statistics were from Andrea Streppa, who is a social media advisor. So the final problem that I've kind of come up with once launching these campaigns is social media is often heralded as the immediate way to target your audience, to engage your audience. And according to Converse Digital, that's thinking. They estimate that one effective campaign on social media, the effects of that are seen 6 months later. And if you launch that same campaign on multiple social media platforms, you can cut that 6 months down to 3 months, so you can half the time. But that's still a 3-month lag time in which you've launched a campaign until you're seeing the drawback. So that's the second point. Even a really successful campaign, what does that mean? You've got to really break down those groups. So my final point is the true cost of social media. Small businesses that are on social media are really pushed to either spend the minimum amount or to advertise through that platform. And the truth is, these platforms have dumbed down the effects of what are free so much that you're really forced into paying that minimum amount. So those that are on Facebook, 53% of the small businesses on Facebook spend more than $100 per month on social media advertising. And 14% of them spend more than $1,000 a month on social media. Again, that's small businesses on Facebook. So going back to the original viewpoint, time. So why wouldn't we just pay somebody else to manage all of this and free up the time for ourselves? As Professor Palin pointed out in the beginning, the other really big constraint we face is money. And according to PayScale, the average salary for a social media manager is $47,000 a year, which is a huge amount of money. That could be more than, I mean, that was more than my business made in its first year, so there's no way I could have afforded to pay somebody else to do it. Then the last, Duke University actually did one of the most thorough reports I've ever read on social media, and they published it in the Wall Street Journal. Their staggering statistic was only 15% of the top 350 marketers in a study could show that social media had any impact at all on their businesses.
All right. Did I interrupt you, Ryan, or you finished?
No, I was just going to say I hope that some of those statistics were enlightening, and you can see how I base my judgment on social media.
Now, Ryan, did you have a professor that trained you on data points being a key component to defending a position?
Yeah, I sure did. If data points weren't riddled in it.
Now, I know Elizabeth had a professor that also taught her how to probe data points.
Of course. Of course.
All right. So if you would like to make your rebuttal, Elizabeth, on the opening statement.
Yeah, of course. So a lot of really good points, obviously lots of statistics to back them up, but we are talking about startups, right? So we all, like you said, time and money, those are the biggest things that we struggle with, that we have to think about and deal with on a day-to-day basis, and I know both of us face that. So I'm going to actually start with the money portion and then get back to the time portion. So being also a former marketing major, as well as entrepreneurship, there is an importance for marketing, right? You can do all the work that you do, but if you don't tell anyone about it, then you're really the only one that has that there. Absolutely. So just to think about it, just a couple numbers to consider. I want everyone who's listening, if you are an entrepreneur, if you have a business, or if you want to start a business, I want you to think what your projected sales would be for a year. Say year 1, year 2, and year 3, if you want, and just jot it down what that number would be. Now, for traditional advertising and marketing, what people do today, what they've done in the past, the cost of a direct mailing campaign, and this is in the United States, is going to run you about $50 per order, which doesn't include postage. Then to advertise in a magazine, you want to plan to spend between $500 per ad if it's a local publication, or $20,000 if it's distributed nationally. And then you'll want to triple that number, because in order to get effective response from any kind of ad, you want to run 3 consecutive months. In order to get any kind of decent ROI on that one. So then a little bit more recent, if you want to run an AdWords campaign to market your company, and that goes cost per click, right? So it can be between $1 or $2 per click, which is a lot higher than it used to be. It used to be a matter of cents, but now it's about $1 or $2 per click. But it can inflate to around $50 to $60 per click, depending on what words and how competitive they are. And then in general, those campaigns have about a 2.7% conversion rate. So if you think about it, you're paying per click, not per sale, not per click. For that one. So those are what publications, Forbes, Entrepreneur Magazine, Inc. Magazine, they all support. They all say these should be a part of your marketing strategy. So if you look at that number, and I totally lowballed this, that's about $16,000 a year for advertising purposes in year 1, and that's without social media. So as Ryan mentioned, you can pay for ads. I know we talked about social media as a free device. It's not. It's just cheaper. And I'm not going to argue that it's not totally free. It's not. Nothing in this world is free. You'll soon know that if you haven't figured it out yet. But it's cheaper. I mean, I can advertise my company, and even if I'm only reaching 60% or 6% of the thousands of people that my ad is being delivered to, I'm only paying $35 for the week-long campaign, to test it out, to test different fields. So for money, it's not free, I agree, but it's cheaper than the other marketing options that entrepreneurs and small business owners have. And then in terms of auto poster, because I know I'm probably getting to the end of my 2 minutes, in terms of the auto poster, it's really, really easy to get that kind of disengaged result if you don't do it consciously and consciously. So for the auto posters, and I'm not sure, my definition, there are two ways you can look at them. An auto poster that gives you a bunch of articles and posts that it says you should repost or share or something, and then you put them in a list and you can dump them all in there and it'll post it for you. That's fine. That's where you get the disengagement. You do have to sit down and do your own post, put your own content out there. But then again, you're either going to be doing that, and I recommend using the auto posters. There are a number of them. But you can do that. You can sit down and get your media quality there and get your post done and get it out. Or, you have those other options for marketing, but they're going to run you a lot more money. So I'd say, as entrepreneurs, we might not get the best thing, but we need to figure out what the best is for the money that we have to spend.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, Ryan, for your opening statements and rebuttals. I encourage everyone to post comments and questions in the chat feature of GoToMeeting, and Pepe actually posted a couple. I don't know if the two of you can see that, but the first one states, as everyone knows, not all social media platforms are alike. Would either of you compare social media campaigns to fundraising campaigns on other platforms?
So actually, Ryan, if you don't mind, we're actually working to launch a crowdfunding campaign hopefully within the next year for Nonsense. And this is kind of something that's that I've been looking into and looking at. And they are separate but connected. So I've been doing a bit of research. I unfortunately don't have it in front of me right now, but the fundraising campaigns are great to get your idea out there and get money in it. I would say crowdfunding rather than fundraising, although if you're working in a nonprofit environment, then it would be fundraising. But you are, and I will post all of these statistics and I'll look them up just to refresh them. But you need to have a certain, like the most successful crowdfunding and fundraising campaigns come from individuals or organizations that have a certain size presence on social media, because that helps them reach a wider audience of people who are already interested in using socially based tools in order to accomplish something, whether it's communication or fundraising or crowdfunding. So they are very much linked. And at the end, I'll give you a link to one of my blogs that'll have all that information on there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've been involved in a series of crowdfunding campaigns, and although they are a different platform, they're kind of essentially their own social media. They're directly tied into your social media presence and the people that are putting it on. One of the big statistics is that 80% of it, even on crowdfunding, are family, friends, and fools, which is the same way that most startup businesses fund the 3 Fs of fundraising. It's only really the big campaigns that we all did as the success stories on crowdfunding that are successfully able to make that leap through a video that went viral or a large existing presence elsewhere.
One of my observations as I watched the different crowdfunding platforms, it seems that many of them are not as much raising funds as they are pre-sales. Do you have any thoughts on the distinction with that, or is it a different impact?
Well, I think the only way to be successful in crowdfunding is to offer something, unfortunately. I think everyone would love to say that crowdfunding gets you money because people have an emotional attachment to your product. But the reality is, if you look at the successful campaigns that have been launched, it's because they're getting the product early, they're getting a test product. Even campaigns that don't have anything to give will often offer up a letter from the founder or a note from the team. It's some sort of item that's being exchanged for that money.
All right, Maria in Argentina has a question. And by the way, Maria, when I first met Elizabeth, it was through a study abroad trip to Buenos Aires.
Yep.
So she wanted to know how have you ever measured the impact of social media on performance? And previously she was talking also in terms of sales and profitability. Would either of you like to jump into that?
I can answer, or Elizabeth?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So I've spent a lot of time analyzing how much it costs, and it's really a difficult thing to do, and a lot of the research that I did for this debate proved how difficult it is to do. So as Elizabeth said, although social media may not be free, it is cheaper than a lot of other ways of advertising. So looking at the exact money that I have spent on various platforms and totaling that based on the response you get back, and the way that I've done that is, obviously I'm a fairly techie person through a different landing website. So by clicking on a social media campaign, it will take you to a very specific place on our website, and through that we can analyze the traffic that one campaign is directly contributing onto our website's page. And then through the use of cookies, we can track that individual through the various sales processes to see if they do visit other pages on our website and essentially get to the point where they're reaching out to us as a business or they are purchasing from us. So that's the biggest way to do it. And then the more difficult way is time. How much is my time worth? Really breaking down the number of hours I have spent on keeping a social media campaign alive or a social media page just running, and trying to assign a value to what an hour of my time is worth. So that's definitely the more tricky thing to do, but it's the attempt that I make.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, there are a number of, for the less techie individuals here, there are a number of sites and companies that will help you with that. So you don't have to yourself go through everything. Again, it will be extra money, and it'll differ based on how much you want tracked and what you're really looking for. But sites like that do exist to help you kind of figure out what your return is on the work that you're doing on social beyond traffic, and track that over a long period of time. Because, for instance, for our company, while yes, there are always people, unfortunately, in the hospital who can't receive live flowers, we do actually have that seasonality of the gift industry. So a lot of our campaigns will have to do just to keep that name recognition out there, and then it's tracking kind of longer term how much of the campaigns we do and kind of our off seasons affect and help us for our kind of on times around holidays and whatnot. So I use Google Analytics. I use the analytics that the social media sites give you. They're decent. They're not the best, but they're decent. And if you hook Google into that, it adds a little extra layer, which is helpful. Again, landing pages, definitely a great idea. But if you don't want to put the work in there, there are also sites that are available to you that will do the work for you to give you that information.
Yeah, Google Analytics can take you a really far way. It can actually create the pseudo landing pages for each campaign. Mm-hmm. The other thing is that often social media platforms are actually getting bigger on selling of products. So you can now sell products directly through Facebook mm-hmm. and directly through Instagram. So the analytics you could get behind that would be really good because they don't have to go anywhere, so you can directly track people through that.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Google Analytics. Like, for example, through this debate in the Eventbrite page, I linked in Google Analytics to do a tracking of a number of different demographics. Some people I've spoken to struggle a little bit with how to utilize Google Analytics. Is it self-training that you've done with this, or are there different ways that you can go take online courses to utilize Google Analytics?
Yeah, so I think it depends on what kind of learner you are. I chose a couple of different ways. I think Google Analytics, and I know a lot of different software companies are trying to model their software and what you see online after social media, simply because people are familiar with it, and because of that, it's easier to kind of figure out and maneuver on your own. I learned mostly by clicking on different things and kind of self-learning. I would say there are a lot of resources online on how to use Google Analytics, and a lot of different websites that offer courses on a myriad of things, including Google Analytics and stuff like that. But I would say my favorite way to learn is play around with it myself, and then go to any co-working space, find the techie people and sit next to them and bring a donut or something. And I bring a box of dozen donuts whenever I go to some co-working space, and I make friends really easily. But it's always helpful to learn from a person as well, for me. So that's kind of what I do. But I find it's pretty straightforward. I mean, if you've gotten to Google Analytics, I feel like it's a pretty easy to use and figure out platform.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with more what you said. When and fail, go to YouTube. I promise you somebody has made a YouTube video on just about anything.
Yeah. Yeah, that one, and if you don't mind parting with $10, Udemy, it's Udemy, has a ton of courses that you can take, and they're styled after college courses. So you can, if you want that professor or teacher kind of feel to it, you'll get that.
Okay, excellent. Well, Shay has a question, and he says, do you think social media platforms offer a consistent forum to engage with potential customers and investors throughout the different phases of the entrepreneurial pursuit?
Yes, I think they do. I think investors, it's a more face-to-face, or my experience with investors is much more face-to-face individualized interactions, whereas potential customers, as I said, my view is there are better ways to do it than social media, but I think there is a, as Elizabeth has already pointed out, a way to do it. But for investors, I would definitely recommend a much more face-to-face, personalized interaction.
Yeah, and I think this is a good point to bring up the fact that social media is going to differ based on what industry you're in and what kind of business you're running. Personally, my customers exist on social media, so that's where I keep the conversation going and continue to communicate with them. However, the investors I've spoken to, they follow all of our social media sites, they interact with us there, but my primary relationship with them is face-to-face, or maybe a little bit online, but mostly just to set up the next face-to-face meeting. So that's from my experience. I found that investors, we had another professor, I don't know if Ryan had her, Laura Zovelson, who said working with an investor is like dating, and you want to give them the time and attention and respect and all of that you would a first date almost. And then keep that going, because these are people that you are going to be working with very closely for lots of time, for a long period of time. And you're going to have to give them good news and bad news, and work with them through difficult situations. And let's face it, that's kind of like a relationship. So I would definitely say face-to-face with investors.
Do you also bring them donuts?
Yes. And coffee, though I had the coffee in there,
It strikes me, like Elizabeth, yours is more of a B2C business, and Ryan, yours is more of a B2B. Do you think that has a big factor on whether social media is impactful or not, or is it irrelevant?
I think it's huge, and in fact, Elizabeth and I have talked about this many times before this conversation. I think because of the different industries, that has really shaded both of our viewpoints in the dynamics that it has. I would consider myself B2B because I'm heading up the decision makers in specific organizations, not attacking a wide market.
What do you think, Elizabeth?
I would say, yeah. I mean, again, totally different industry. So a lot of the people, when we do go to approach businesses, we're approaching, managers of hospital gift shops, different gift shop owners, stocking companies, and all of these people tend to be very, one, we're working a lot with women, so we work a lot with women, and two, women and men in this industry, even when we work with other business organizations, they tend to be very bubbly, excited, creative, very artsy kind of people, so to speak. So they enjoy the relationship on social media, and I think it gives us that kind of lighthearted feel to our relationship, but again, a lot of the more serious conversations and connections happen off social media. It's more of a continuous kind of relationship keeper, I would say.
All right, Professor Benson, which may have been one of your former professors, she has a question. Doesn't it seem that having a strong social media presence will be much more important for startups in some industries than others? So it's similar to the B2C, B2B, but now we're talking from an industry perspective, and she said, for instance, a consumer product line versus a tech-focused enterprise like a mobile app-based enterprise. So it's the type of industry, a distinction also.
So I would say, and I mean, Ryan, we kind of touched on this, and obviously Ryan and I have talked about this a lot and bantered a bit, but I would definitely say, again, you're going to what social media platforms apply to me. So for this example, you can use Nonsense as the consumer product, and I have a very good friend that has a mobile app that's based on location sharing for friends that are going out and partying, like going to the bars or going to events or concerts, that helps them locate each other without making it public knowledge where they are. For him and his app, it's really important that he's on social media because all of his users are on social media, and it's a socially oriented app. I think Ryan would probably be better able to give an example of the other type of mobile app for social media, but it does vary, and that's why you can't really make a broad generalization with it, because it does vary so much based on where your customers are living and who you need to talk to.
Yeah, I agree. I don't need to extrapolate much more. It does just depend who your target audience is, especially when you break out the demographics of each social media platform, if you are going to go that way. On Pinterest, if you're targeting the generation just below Elizabeth and I, that would be the way to go. If you're targeting older users, Facebook is the way to go, and Instagram is Generation X or whatever you would consider the 24 to 30-year-olds. So that plays a big part as well. And then gender roles as well, Pinterest being about 68% female. So if you're targeting young males, you'd be wasting your time on Pinterest. So there's that to consider as well.
If you're going to be using social media, are there any pitfalls that you can think of?
Oh yeah. And this is going to help Ryan's point a lot. Spending too much time on it is the huge one. It's very easy because we use it for ourselves, or at least I'm going to assume that many of us use it for ourselves. So we're used to being on it all the time, checking it all the time. So I would say the biggest pitfall, and one that I really had to work to get over and kind of get beyond, is treat it like an organized system, like a part of your company that's allotted X amount of time for X amount of actions, expecting X amount and really making it part of a scheduled, thought-out, planned-out system rather than the fun, lighthearted thing that you did in high school and college with all of your personal friends. So I think the pitfall is just treating your company social media the same way as your personal social media. And as with anything, something that's useful can also be the opposite if it's not used properly. And this is definitely one of those things.
Yeah, I'm glad. Really good question, because I have some strong viewpoints on this. The biggest one that I'm always cognizant about, and I'm waiting until the day that it's a thing, and you don't own the intellectual property of anything you put on any social media site. So it's on Pinterest, on Instagram in particular. The second you post it, you don't own it anymore. So if you took 10 grand to produce a really nice video that summarizes your business, unfortunately, you just forfeited all of the intellectual property rights for that. The same is true with Facebook, everything, media posts, anything like that. So that's a big fear of mine. I'm waiting to the day that Instagram realizes this. I'm sure they do, and all of a sudden starts selling other people's photos or monetizing in that way. There's the second one, and this kind of goes back to what one of Elizabeth's really good points is, through social media you can establish this kind of personality of the business. It becomes an entity of its own. You're not going to please everybody. By being that open and that accessible, you can rub people the wrong way really easily. I know I have done that inadvertently. I've posted an article that I thought was interesting and applicable to our audience, and certain members and customers didn't appreciate it. So you have to weigh the negativity of being totally exposed in that as well.
With to follow up on that, within the fine print, you're giving away quite a few rights, as you mentioned, Ryan. How about the thoughts on just being on any of these platforms? You're basically giving up all of your privacy rights. Any thoughts on that? Because I know, Ryan, you studied that quite a bit by developing an app and the rights from being on an Android platform or an iPhone platform, and I'm sure you've looked at that also, Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is something I feel very strongly about, and I have to kind of be cautious when I'm talking to people about it. But what people don't realize is if you own a smartphone, you've already given up all of these rights. I promise you, anybody that is a cell phone provider or the owner of the phone is using your personal information to run analytics, even if it's, quote unquote, they take names and all of that stuff out of it. They're still using your personal information to generate whatever information they need. So one of the big things that we struggle with is, of course, to make our dog fence example work, we have to be able to know where you are. So essentially, we are tracking you, although we avoid using that word because it has certain connotations. That you have to give that stuff up.
So for nonsense, this was. So I also I have a partner. I work with my mother. She refuses to have anything to do with the business, but she also, as any mother, does not refuse to voice her opinion about things. So, so her big issue did have to do with privacy and intellectual property rights and whatnot. And I think the best example that I could have given her was the Tom Shoes and Bob's Skechers example, where Tom Shoes came out. They had the one-for-one program, buy a pair of shoes, give a pair of shoes away. And then Skechers came out with shoes called Bob's that looked almost identical to Tom's, and I think also benefited kids in a disadvantaged area or in some kind of situation. So it was almost a mirror image of the company, but you don't see Bob's ads anymore. I don't think I've seen a pair of Bob's recently. And it was just Tom's survived that and is still a thriving company, so much so that they've opened up a ton of different branches with different product lines because they just had the better company. They were the original, and people kind of relate to that, knew that. I know personally I like that company. I own Tom's shoes, and I was really mad when the Bob's commercial came on. I was personally affronted by it. So, today so much is accessible, and so, you're knocked if you share something, and you're knocked if you don't share something. So it's kind of like build something, and heck, if people want to replicate it and try to replicate it, that means I'm building something great, and do it right, and the better company will, come out of it and get through it. So for me, I would be happy to see someone trying to replicate what I'm doing because, that means that they believe in my idea so much that they want to do it themselves. Not that I'd be unhappy about it, or wouldn't be unhappy about it, but I think it really comes down to who you are as a company, and Tom did a really good job in that situation of being kind of the better company and handling the situation really well, so that Bob's kind of fiddled out and disappeared.
All right. Pepe asked another question, and Linda Welch gave her a shout-out on her question. She said, lately I have seen a trend that many small businesses are no longer creating traditional websites, but instead are opting to use their Facebook page as both their main website and social media platforms. Is that something that you would recommend?
Short answer, no. There are so many ways to make an actual website. You can use, I would say, if you find it easier, and I know some people do this simply because they find that Facebook isn't easier. They know how to use the platform, so they don't have to pay someone to make this fancy website, because making a website, if you don't do it yourself, is very expensive. And I can understand that thought process. But I would definitely say at least have like a WordPress website along with it or something. Ryan can give you more of the analytics or the technical aspect of why that is, but I would definitely say at least have some kind of basic website. It's fine if you use Facebook if that's where your customers are to communicate and do most everything that you want to do, but definitely have a website there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Short answer, definitely not. I would never recommend that to anybody. I have noticed the trend, though, as well. I think, as Elizabeth already pointed out, the main reason is cost. It's totally free to have a business page on Facebook at the moment. Who knows what will be. But there are so many different websites out there that are very cheap. They're called drag and drop websites, so you literally just drag something across the screen, and this is where you want this text box to go. That if anybody is tech savvy, even in the absolute slightest, I don't think it would be a problem for them to figure out, and those roughly run $120 for the year of hosting and for displaying that website. So I don't think cost would be prohibitive.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I know Etsy is really popular, and Etsy has a great platform for retail as well as wholesale. But personally, I would definitely say still have some kind of website that's your own, because again, and this is a kind of more technical probably than you need to know, but if you are within a Facebook site or an Etsy site or something like that, your page can't get ranked any higher than the umbrella site that you're under in Google. So even with the WordPress example, I don't know what WordPress is ranked, maybe a 6 or 7, something like that, in terms of Google. If you're on a 1 to 10 scale, you can never get higher than that number. So, and that goes for everything else. You'll be ranked either at or below what the parent site is ranked at with Google.
And another concern I would have, and Ryan, you made the comment, if Facebook changes, one of the things that'd be more comfortable with your own website is you control it 100%. Whereas with Facebook or using any other platform, it could be a moving target.
Especially with interface.
Yes. All right. Peep has a question. She said, for potential entrepreneurs, do you think people utilize social media for their sources of opportunity or business ideas? In your own experience before starting the businesses, did social media influence your decision of starting the company?
I can start, or you can start, Ryan, up to you.
You got it.
Okay. So I think social media is a great place to test things, just because you have a lot of different people in one place that you can easily target. And if you've ever used, I know you have to pay for it, but you can pay $5 a day for one day and just spend $5. You can use really, really specific targeting for a social media ad to test it out. So for testing, definitely. Sources of opportunity. So here's one example. There isn't really a great source for me, unless I pay for the list, to access people who are active hospital gift shop managers or people who work in that area. So gift shops for people specifically in certain hospital units. Facebook does let me search this and target those people, and I didn't target them for ad purposes. Actually, a survey when I was testing out, is this the right market for this product? And obviously it was accompanied by a message, but they were really happy to help me and give me feedback and take that survey. And those are people I didn't know, I had no connection to otherwise, but because they were on social media, I just reached out. It never hurts to ask, right? So that was one personal experience. I wouldn't say it influenced my decision to start the company, but it definitely allowed me, especially at the beginning, to give, and especially when I didn't have a website yet or when our website was very bare bones, people were sometimes more comfortable going to Facebook or actually, yeah, at that time we just had Facebook. So people were more comfortable going there. I could say, find us online or like us on Facebook. And most of the time people would like us on Facebook because it was just a more comfortable thing for them to do. So that was my personal experience.
Yeah, you kind of summed it up. I don't have anything much to add to that. I think it is a really, really good validation tool, one that I've used a lot, especially in Greek Check. Without getting into too many details, I know we're wrapping up here. As Greek Check as a company, once we put together a really solid development team, we started taking on outside jobs and using our in-house development team to push products. And we actually launched the idea through social media, got some feedback through Tech Hub, which is a big social media Facebook page, and got some feedback and actually a few jobs through it. So it's a good place to flush those ideas out. And you can't, the worst case scenario isn't very bad.
All right. Well, our hour has gone by fairly quickly, but I would like to give each of you an opportunity to just make a closing statement, and also how can the audience find out more information about your respective companies?
Great. Betta, as you started, I'll let you start this one.
All right. Well, like I said, you can find us online, obviously, on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and Instagram. The spelling of the company name, and I'll type it in the chat as well, Nonsense Flowers is like no smell, so Nonscents Flowers. So you can find my company online or on social media, and you can also connect with me personally. Ryan's referred to me as Betta a few times. That's my nickname. And my personal Twitter handle is actually BettaBU. And I also have a number of blogs that I host, and I'll also put them in the chat just for easy, you know, easy seeing and remembering, and put them up there. But feel free to follow me and shoot me any questions you have. I think part of being a former student of Gary Palin's is that we tend to like to help people a lot, and new businesses and business ideas are almost like puzzles for us because we've gone through so many of them, that it's fun for us to kind of get a new idea and help people work through them. So definitely follow us, find us online, and keep asking questions. These are some really, really great questions, and I think people could gain a lot from really getting into them in a lot of detail.
Yeah, great. So quick closing statement. I would just really analyze what is best for your business and what is the best use of your time before you just automatically assume social media is going to be the best thing for you. It can really be good for businesses in certain industries, as the questions have really come to light. Just don't take it as I have to be on social media, because I don't think you do. I've put my website, www.greekcheck.com, and my email, ryan@greekcheck.com. Feel free to reach out to me. As Elizabeth said, I do love discussing ideas, talking about social media and other ways that you can get involved with your audience other than through the standard measures. I'm really heavily involved in the entrepreneurship community where I am, so I'd be more than happy to talk to anyone that wants to have a discussion about it.
On behalf of SEEC, I'd like to thank all the attendees for your active participation. Your questions drove a dynamic and informative debate. We trust the conversation was useful and will assist your decisions regarding social media and your startup. We've received tremendous response for this first SEEC Online event, and as a result, have organized a panel discussion on June 23rd. The topic is, how will combining entrepreneurial thinking and professional sales impact millennials? We hope you will all join us. A special thanks to both Elizabeth and Ryan. Your preparation, knowledge, and depth of understanding of this important issue facing startups is extremely impressive. I'm very proud of both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, thank you. Bye, everyone.